During an earthquake, I was injured and became deaf while saving Matthew. He promised to love me forever, but 1 year into our marriage, he brought his mistress before me. Taking advantage of the fact that I couldn't hear, he openly spoke words of love to her. Matthew didn't know that I had already learned to read lips. Every word they said, I saw with perfect clarity. I asked for a divorce and moved out that same night. Matthew was unfazed, telling his friends with a cold smile, "A deaf woman dares to challenge me. Who does she think will want her after she leaves me?" But I never looked back, not even when he came to regret it. I never looked back. Late one night, he came to my home, begging me to love him one more time. I smiled. "What did you say?" "I can't hear you." When my friends first told me something was wrong with Matthew, I didn't pay it any mind. We had been together for 5 years, and my ears were injured saving him in an earthquake. He had promised he would love me forever. We had only been married a year. Anyone could cheat, but not Matthew. Just 2 days ago, he told me he had cleared his schedule to make up for the honeymoon he owed me. And it was perfect timing, as I had recently learned to read lips. Although I still couldn't hear, I could understand what people were saying face to face, which would make traveling much easier. I planned it perfectly, going to Matthew's company to pick him up from work, wanting to give him a surprise. However, there was no surprise, only a shock for me. Matthew walked out of the elevator with a beautiful young woman. When they saw me, both of them were visibly startled. The girl wore no makeup. Her long, dark hair draped over her shoulders, bearing a striking resemblance to the innocent girl I once was. She asked Matthew softly, "Should I leave first?" Matthew shook his head. "It's fine. She can't hear anyway." "Really? Then can I call you darling in front of her?" Matthew didn't answer, but a doting smile crossed his lips. Then, he walked toward me and began typing a message on his phone. "What are you doing here?" "I came to pick you up from work." "Matthew, I still have things to do." He paused, perhaps realizing he was being too obvious, and added, "Do you want to go home first? Or come have dinner with us?" He put the option of going home first, clearly wanting me to leave. Otherwise, he would have just invited me to dinner directly. His old love and his new flame, sitting at the same table. How ridiculous. On the way to the restaurant, the girl told me her name was Nina, and I could call her Nina. It wasn't strange for girls to use affectionate names with each other, but I saw that Matthew also called her Nina. Nina's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. When I looked away, she lowered her voice and called Matthew darling. She knew I couldn't hear. Matthew also knew I couldn't hear, but I could see. In the rearview mirror, I saw the shape of her lips with perfect clarity. Matthew didn't reject the name. He even smiled. The fortress I had built around my heart suddenly crumbled. When the car stopped, I asked Nina to get out first. Matthew looked over impatiently and reflexively asked, "What are you trying to do?" Then, he remembered I couldn't hear and irritably picked up his phone to type. I reached out and stopped his hand. "Matthew, have you fallen for Nina?" His arm, which had been about to shake me off, suddenly stiffened. Matthew looked up and stared at me. The answer was there, in that single movement, in that single glance, clear and devastating. My nose instantly stung with tears. Seeing me on the verge of crying, Matthew grew even more impatient. "Cry, cry, cry. Who are you putting on that long face for? You know you can't hear, yet you insist on going out. Aren't you embarrassed enough?" After his tirade, he let out a deep breath. When he typed a message for me, it was a completely different story. "Nina and I are just discussing work. It's not what you think. Scarlett, you can't hear now, so you're prone to suspicion. Can you please go home first?" He was clearly afraid of being branded a cheater, so he denied it even as he was doing it. I vaguely remembered the day of the earthquake, how I had rushed to shield him with my own body without a second thought. After I was injured, my hearing was gone instantly. Matthew's expression then was as if the sky had fallen. He held me, crying and shouting. Later, I was lucky to survive. Even though I was deaf, he married me without hesitation. At our wedding, all the guests heard his vows, but I never did, and it was a good thing. Not hearing them with my own ears lessened the pain. I held Matthew's hand and told him very, very softly, "Matthew, I've learned to read lips." Matthew flinched, his eyes flickering wildly. He realized that although I couldn't hear his conversation with Nina, I had seen it all. "Matthew, If you don't love me anymore, you can just tell me. Instead of being with another woman behind my back, whispering sweet nothings to her in front of my face, treating me like a fool, I lowered my head, not daring to look at him, afraid he would say something even more hurtful. Before things could get any more humiliating, I was the one who brought up divorce. Matthew, let's separate. He had no shame, but I did. That's how it is in love. The one who tries to save face is the one who loses. Let me know when you're free. We can go get the divorce papers. That night, I moved out of our home. Besides Matthew and Nina, no one else knew we had reached the point of divorce. A few friends thought we were just having a small fight and wanted to mediate. Matthew was already in the private room when I arrived. The room was a swirl of neon lights and a cacophony of different sounds. If I could still hear, I wouldn't have learned to read lips. And if that were the case, I wouldn't have seen what Matthew said. He was chatting with Finn. Finn asked, "For real, you and Scarlett are getting a divorce? Don't call her that. In a few days, she won't be your sister-in-law anymore. Are you divorcing her? Or is she divorcing you?" She brought it up. Finn's jaw dropped in disbelief. It made sense. A woman willing to risk her life for a man must have been deeply hurt to want to leave him. But Matthew was unfazed, a cold sneer on his face. A deaf woman dares to challenge me. Who does she think will want her after she leaves me? A deaf woman nobody wants. So, that was his assessment of me. 5 years of love, 1 year of marriage, and 1 life-saving act. In the end, it all came down to those 2 words. A deaf woman. I was glad I saw him say it with my own eyes. The last flicker of hope in my heart was completely extinguished. I turned and walked out, spotting a print shop across the street that was still open. As I pushed the door open, the owner asked without looking up, "Printing or copying?" I couldn't see her lips, so I just said, "Can you print a divorce agreement?" The owner, as if sensing gossip, looked up sharply, then smiled. "Of course. How many copies do you need?" Divorce agreements usually come in 2 copies. Then, you got it. I transferred the divorce agreement I had prepared days ago to her computer. Before printing, she asked me to check for typos. I shook my head. No need. I had read every single word of that agreement countless times. There were no mistakes. As I left the print shop, I received a message from a friend. "Scarlett, where are you? You're not here yet." At the door, I walked into the private room, divorce agreement in hand. Matthew was looking down, replying to a message. Finn nudged him, and he slowly looked up at me. He didn't stand, nor did he speak. His eyes were as cold as if he were looking at a stranger. I wasn't too sad, compared to the disgust for a deaf woman I had just witnessed. This coldness was nothing. A friend spoke up. "Matthew, man up and apologize to Scarlett. You two have been giving each other the cold shoulder for days." Matthew's lips twitched into a smirk, but the look in his eyes held no warmth. I clutched the agreement in my hand and took a long, silent breath. I was thankful he didn't yield, didn't open his arms to gently pull me in. If he had, I was afraid my resolve would have softened. The crueler he was to me, the easier it was for me to let go. Under everyone's gaze, I walked up to Matthew and handed him both copies of the divorce agreement. "Matthew, take a look. If there are no issues, please sign." "What is this?" Matthew had just reached for it when Finn, next to him, craned his neck and saw the large words at the top. Holy crap, a divorce agreement. The words sent a shockwave through the room. Someone quietly turned off the music and tried to switch the lights back to a normal white, but he fumbled with the controls. Red, green, yellow, and purple lights flashed across Matthew's face before finally settling on a bright, pure white. The atmosphere in the room had dropped to freezing. Everyone instinctively held their breath, trying to make themselves invisible, until Matthew spoke. "Scarlett, don't you dare think that just because you saved me, you can walk all over me like this." "I'm not walking all over you. I'm just trying to let you and Nina be together." Everyone in their wealthy circle knew how things worked, especially these friends who drank and partied with Matthew. Who among them didn't know about him and Nina? But they all tacitly agreed. A mistress is a mistress. A wife is a wife. After you've had your fun outside, you eventually return to your family. But why should I have to wait for him to return? Even if I am deaf, even if nobody wants me, I don't need his pity. "Matthew, sign it." We can have an amicable divorce without involving our parents. Are you threatening me? Matthew shot up, his eyes blazing with fury. Just then, the door to the room opened again, and Nina appeared. I had asked her to come, since Matthew was so sure he could control me. I wanted Nina to witness our end firsthand. But Matthew seemed stunned by my allure-nothing determination. He couldn't believe that I would actually leave him. He couldn't believe that someone like me, unloved by my parents and deaf, would be willing to give up the title of Mrs. Matthew, sign it. Nina is here too. You must have promised her happiness. Don't let her down. Love, at its freshest and most intense, is always accompanied by promises. Just like when Matthew made promises to me, moving everyone who heard them. In the end, he was the first to break them. There were too many people there. I had backed him into a corner. Not signing was not an option. He needed his friend's respect, his mistress' adoration. Only for me, he was filled with rage. So, in the end, he signed. Every stroke of the pen was filled with resentment. Resentment that I had embarrassed him in front of so many people. But so what? He embarrassed me first. I took one of the copies. Then I smiled at Finn, who was watching the show. If Matthew and I ever end up in court, Mr. Finn, you'll have to testify for me that he signed this voluntarily. Finn, just kill me now. After I left, the atmosphere in the room remained frozen. No one dared to party. Looking at Matthew's dark expression, Finn finally waved his hand and told everyone to leave. Nina asked softly, "What about me?" Finn figured that since Matthew and I had already signed the divorce papers, and Nina was always sweet-talking, he'd let her comfort Matthew. But as soon as Nina sat down next to Matthew, before she could even speak, he said coldly, "You should go home." Nina was unwilling. "Darling, it wasn't me who made you angry. You can't take it out on me." Matthew was not a patient man. Having been publicly humiliated by me tonight, and with Nina now disobeying him, he was more irritable than ever. He ignored her, stood up, and only said to Finn, "Let's go." Before leaving without a backward glance, Nina called after Finn, "Mr. Finn, what about me?" "Finn, go home by yourself." Nina. Matthew and Finn went to another bar and drank until they were completely wasted. A designated driver took him home. The house was pitch black. The lamp that was usually left on for him was off. There was no one in pajamas, rushing to catch him as he stumbled. No one whispering, "Matthew, are you okay? Do you want some water?" There was nothing. Only a cold wind blowing in from an open window, sweeping over Matthew and making him shiver. He turned on the lights himself and looked around. I hadn't taken a single thing. Everything was just as it was. The only thing missing was me. Matthew stood there, suddenly feeling that the early morning wind wasn't so cold after all, because another place was much colder. Matthew didn't know that after he and Finn left, Nina was furious. So, she came to find me. She showed me many pictures of her sweet moments with Matthew. Then she asked me sarcastically, "Can you make him that happy? You probably don't even remember the sound of his laugh, do you?" She underestimated my feelings for Matthew. Everything about him, I remembered with perfect clarity after I lost my hearing. Every night she spent with him, I replayed my memories of us in my mind. After my injury, I never gave up on treatment. The doctor said there was a chance my hearing could be restored. But after so long with no results, not just Matthew, but even I was starting to have doubts. I could actually understand Matthew's weariness of me. I also believed that when he promised to love me forever, he was being sincere. But sincerity is fleeting. Who can keep pulling another person along as they stumble? From the moment I suggested I wanted to go back to work, and Matthew worried I would be a burden to others, I knew that one day, he would find me a burden too. I had imagined countless scenarios of him being honest with me, saying he was tired, that he didn't want to take care of me anymore. I could even accept him saying he didn't love me anymore. The one thing I never expected was that he would choose the most humiliating way, cheating. But I believed that if he could betray me today, he would definitely betray Nina in the future. So if Nina wanted him, I would gladly give him to her. Don't worry. As long as Matthew doesn't bother me, I won't look back. Bother you? Nina snorted as if she had heard the world's biggest joke. "You're a deaf woman. Who would bother with you?" But Matthew really did bother me. Half a month after I got the signed divorce agreement, I had urged him several times to find the time to finalize the divorce. He always said he was busy. Once, he even got annoyed at my persistence and blocked me on social media. Today, he suddenly unblocked me, sent me a picture, and asked, "Who is this person?" I opened the picture and stared at the two heads from behind for a few seconds before I remembered that one of them was mine. The other was Nathan, my divorce lawyer, because Matthew kept delaying the divorce. I went to a lawyer for a consultation on how long it would take to sue for divorce. That day, outside the restaurant, a group of college students almost bumped into me, and Nathan reached out to study me. At first glance, the photo did look a bit intimate. Matthew seemed to have lost it, demanding, "Who is this guy?" "Scarlett, we're not divorced yet. This is cheating." He was a master of double standards. Unfortunately for him, there was nothing between Nathan and me. From what I knew, Nathan was deeply in love with his girlfriend. They weren't married, but had a child together. But the woman wouldn't let the child call him dad. The last time I consulted him about the divorce, Nathan mentioned a bit of his past. He had been foolish when he was younger and had deeply hurt the woman. So, for all these years, even with a child between them, they couldn't mend their broken relationship. Nathan even said that day that men often say things they don't mean when they're angry. I understood, but I didn't accept it. Did being angry give him the right to publicly belittle me? Did it give him the right to cheat? I expressionlessly blocked Matthew on my phone. And then, he came storming to my place. "What? You found your next catch. So now you want to kick me to the curb. You say I betrayed our love. But what about you? Even if Nina and I were a bit close, I never thought about leaving you. What are you trying to do now? Divorce me and jump right into that man's arms?" I couldn't understand his anger, but I could smell the strong scent of alcohol on him. He must have been drinking again. People like him, who have been immersed in a world of pleasure-seeking since their teens, have a different moral compass. That's why he said that even if he was intimate with Nina, he never thought about leaving me. So he believed he had done nothing wrong. I wanted to laugh, but it felt pointless. Go home and get some rest. Instead of worrying about me, you should find the time to finalize our divorce. Scarlett. He was furious and reached out to pull me into his arms. I struggled to back away. In the struggle, Matthew pulled too hard, and I fell to the ground. A sharp pain shot through me, not from my limbs or my bruised tailbone, but from my stomach. It felt like something was draining out of my body. I looked down and saw that I was bleeding. A terrible thought flashed through my mind. The sight of the blood instantly sobered Matthew up. We were both adults. He realized the same thing I did, and he panicked. On the way to the hospital, he desperately urged the driver to go faster. Faster. The driver was sweating, not daring to say a word, practically flooring the accelerator. Matthew turned back to comfort me. "It's okay. We're almost at the hospital. Everything will be okay." He held me in his arms, very, very tightly. His hands seemed to be trembling. "Matthew." I called his name softly, a sincere smile on my face. "You're just like you were on the day of the earthquake, afraid of losing me." His eyes filled with the most passionate love. I had once silently sighed. If only love could stay at its peak. Would growing old together be easier? "Matthew, are you scared?" He didn't dare answer, just clenched his jaw tightly. But I saw that his eyes were already red. What was he sad about? Me? Or the child he was about to lose? News of my miscarriage quickly reached my parents. Because the hospital I was in belonged to our family, my parents had always hoped Matthew and I would have a child soon. It would make his parents happy and solidify my position in his family. They never imagined that the child would be gone as soon as it arrived. My father was furious. "You didn't know you were pregnant. How could you be so careless? What are we supposed to tell Matthew's parents?" He pushed me, still making excuses. My father glared at me, his teeth clenched. I asked Matthew. "He had no idea you were pregnant. If you had told him sooner, he would have been more careful. So, it was my fault." I looked around. Matthew wasn't there. It was as if the person in the car, his eyes red with fear of losing me, wasn't him at all. Or perhaps, that scene never happened. And it was all my imagination. If he cared about me even a little, he wouldn't have left me here alone to face my parents' accusations. I closed my eyes, unwilling to see what else my parents were saying. They were still scolding me, but I couldn't hear them. Being deaf was wonderful. I could just close my eyes and completely shut out the world. It was wonderful. Matthew's parents came too. They had been against our marriage from the start. They only gave in because they couldn't dissuade Matthew. Now, hearing that I had carelessly lost the baby, they were even more displeased. If you had just listened to us, none of this would have happened. Getting married just to get divorced. What a joke for everyone to see. Matthew stared at the floor, seemingly lost in thought, and didn't respond. His parents then turned to me. They didn't know I could read lips. They opened their mouths to nag. Then, realizing I couldn't hear them, shut them again. I also remained silent. The room fell into a deathly silence. After a long time, Matthew seemed to snap out of his trance. I pushed Scarlett, he said suddenly. His parents were stunned. Matthew repeated clearly. I pushed Scarlett. That's why she fell and had a miscarriage. You. His parents wanted to scold him but didn't know where to start. And Matthew was their only son, whom they had spoiled since he was a child, even though he admitted it was his fault. They couldn't bring themselves to blame him. After an awkward pause, they made an excuse about having something to do and prepared to leave. Just then, my parents returned from the doctor's office. They were delighted to see them. Oh, you're here. We're so sorry. Scarlett has caused you more trouble. Matthew's parents just watched their fawning quietly. My father continued. I've spoken with the doctor. As long as she rests well, she can start trying for a baby again in 3 months. That won't be necessary. I was the one who said it. Matthew's parents whipped their heads around, shocked that I had spoken. My mother then remembered to explain to them. Scarlett still can't hear, but she's learned to read lips. She can communicate normally face-to-face. Is that so? Matthew's mother gave me a meaningful look, as if blaming me for not telling them sooner that I could read lips. But all I wanted to say was, you don't have to worry about us having children anymore, because Matthew and I are getting a divorce. My parents froze, then looked as if their world had collapsed. My father, especially, rushed over, pulled me out of bed, and yelled, "Are you out of your mind? You're deaf, and you dare to bring up divorce." You see, even my own parents looked down on me for being deaf. How could I blame Matthew for it? I lowered my head and smiled. My voice was still soft, but firmer than ever before. Yes, I want a divorce. Not just to get away from Matthew, but also from his parents who had never treated me well after the marriage. And to get away from my own parents. None of them loved me, but I wanted to love myself. My parents caused a huge scene at the hospital. It ended with me closing my eyes and refusing to communicate with them any longer. Matthew's parents actually agreed with the divorce. But because I was the one who initiated it, they felt they had lost face. So they were also unhappy. On the surface, the two families didn't have a falling out, but a rift had formed between them. I ignored them all and checked out of the hospital that day. Matthew had been called to his company for a work matter. When he returned to the hospital, he found an empty room. He had to ask a nurse to find out where I had gone. He chased me to my home and knocked several times, but I didn't open the door. Then he tried to enter the password, only to find I had changed it. He was both angry and anxious, sending me a message. "Scarlett, I know you're in there. If you don't open the door, I'll have someone break it down." I knew he would do it. He always put himself first. So I opened the door and smiled at him. "What's wrong? Do you need something?" My gentle tone seemed to unsettle him. He looked around the apartment, confirmed no one else was there, and then asked, "Scarlett, what will it take for you to forgive me?" "A divorce." "But I don't want a divorce." "Then what can you give me?" "A love that has already soured, the contempt of your parents, or your disappearance when my own parents are blaming me." My words left him speechless, and after saying them, I suddenly burst into tears. At this moment I had never anticipated. When I thought I had figured everything out, I suddenly started crying. "Matthew, I'm just deaf, not stupid. I can feel how you and your parents treat me, and my parents have always thought I was marrying up by being with you. But if I hadn't shielded you back then, you wouldn't even be in this world. I was the one who saved you. I loved you so much. Why does everyone think I'm not good enough for you? Is it just because I'm deaf?" But that wasn't my choice. It was to save him. Before we got married, I told you I would be a burden, but you said you didn't mind. But after we got married, you let your parents look down on me. You let your friends laugh at me. Matthew, your love changed a long time ago. It was I who refused to admit that I had loved the wrong person. It was I who refused to give up, dragging it out and suffering more. If it were possible, let's go back to before we were married. If you proposed to me again, I wouldn't say yes. Matthew's Adam's apple bobbed. His voice was strained. Why not go back to before the earthquake? If you hadn't saved me, wouldn't that have been better? I smiled and shook my head. No, I would still save you, because I'm not like you. My love was sincere until death. But now, I was taking it back. My words seemed to strike a blow to his heart. His expression was pained. As I turned to leave, he suddenly stepped forward and hugged me. Scarlett, please love me one more time. I knew he had spoken because I felt the warm breath on my ear. I could guess what he said, but I didn't want to confirm it. I just turned back, smiled at him, and said, "What did you say? I can't hear you." A sharp pain shot through Matthew's chest. He opened his mouth but couldn't repeat the words. When I left, Matthew was still unwilling to finalize the divorce. He probably thought that with enough time, if he found his sincerity again, I would come back to him. But he was wrong. I left on a very ordinary morning, without telling anyone. The day before, I had even gone to the supermarket to buy groceries, so Matthew thought I wouldn't leave. By the time he realized it, I was already on a plane, and my phone number had been disconnected. He went to my parents in a frenzy, only to find they were even more clueless than he was. Then he went to find Nathan. Nathan smiled. "Mr. Matthew, MS. Scarlett is still currently your wife. Is it not a bit absurd for you to come asking me about her whereabouts?" Matthew gave him a cool look. "You can drop the act. Tell me where she went." "I really don't know." Nathan spread his hands innocently. "MS. Scarlett told me before she left that if she disappeared, you would definitely come looking for me, to prevent me from giving in to temptation and revealing her location. She kept it from me as well." Matthew didn't believe him, but no matter how he tried to get information, Nathan's answers were flawless. He was a lawyer, after all. In the end, Nathan's heart softened, and he offered Matthew a path forward. "You won't be able to find MS. Scarlett, but if you're willing to wait, she will reappear in 2 years." Matthew's heart leaped with joy. His eyes brightened. But then, Nathan delivered the final blow. "She'll be back to sue for divorce." "Matthew, is this a path forward?" "This is a path to hell." Nathan was laughing inwardly but maintained a serious expression. "Mr. Matthew, you must not have been listening carefully. I said, if you are willing to wait, not wait for a divorce, but wait for the one he loves to return, to stay faithful, to have no other distractions." Matthew was stunned for a few seconds. Then his tightly furrowed brow slowly relaxed, as if he understood. From that day on, Matthew quit drinking. He refused all invitations, whether from Finn or anyone else. Nina was fired. Most of the benefits she had gotten from Matthew, she had to return. The little that remained was only because she threatened suicide, and the family didn't want a death on their hands. But since she had dared to challenge the Matthew family, finding a decent job in the city became impossible for her. I heard that after struggling for a few months, Nina had no choice but to pack her things and move to another city. And I, after living abroad for 3 years, returned, ready to fight a tough battle with Matthew. This time, no matter how much he dragged it out, I was getting that divorce. But as soon as I stepped off the plane, I saw Leo waiting at the exit. "Scarlett, over here." He was probably afraid I couldn't hear, so he was waving frantically from the back of the crowd. But now, I could hear. I gave Leo a cool glance. He hurried over to me. "Scarlett, Matthew asked me to pick you up." "Don't call me Scarlett with that tone of a sister-in-law." Leo scratched his head. "But you and Matthew aren't divorced yet. If we just call you by your name, Matthew will get mad and hit me. But if you call me sister-in-law, I'll get mad and hit you." I raised my hand as if to strike him, and Leo immediately surrendered. Okay, ma'am. Can I call you ma'am? That's more like it." I smiled, and prepared to call a cab. Leo got anxious. "Ma'am, I'm already doing as you asked. Don't make things too hard for me. If you take a cab by yourself, Matthew will really hit me." I looked at him quietly. Leo looked like he was about to cry, on the verge of kneeling. I had no choice but to take out my phone in front of him and find the number I had blocked 3 years ago. Matthew's voice was much calmer now. There was no fake politeness, just a direct question. Did Leo pick you up? He's right in front of me. Leo. Didn't she say she could only read lips? How can she hear on the phone? I ignored his shock and just said to Matthew on the other end, I've called my own car. You can have Leo go back. Matthew was silent for a moment, then replied with a single word. Okay. Leo was in a state of shock the entire time. After I hung up, he blurted out, Holy crap. Ma'am, your hearing is back. Why do you sound like you're not happy about it? No way. I'm just so shocked. I ignored him and walked toward the car I had called. Leo continued to chatter beside me. Ma'am, if an acquired injury like yours can be cured, what about congenital deafness? I have a friend who was born deaf in one ear. We've seen so many doctors over the years, but nothing has worked. It's quite worrying. As I was getting into the car, I glanced at him. Leo was clearly flustered and gave me a sheepish smile. So I asked, Is your friend a man or a woman? Leo started to say man, but my gaze cut him off before he could. So he confessed, a woman. I raised an eyebrow. A female friend. Mr. Leo, you don't seem like the type to be so concerned. Do you perhaps have feelings for this friend of yours? Leo rubbed the back of his neck. Embarrassed. Ma'am, you shouldn't pry into other people's private matters. Then why are you here? Prying into my and Matthew's private matters by picking me up for him. Leo was speechless again, standing awkwardly by the car. Before I closed the door, I gave him a phone number from abroad. If you want to know more, you can contact this number yourself. Leo was stunned, then bowed to me in thanks. I was a little surprised. The young master of the Leo family was notoriously a playboy, the king of the social scene. How could he have fallen for a girl and be willing to humble himself before me, someone who is barely his sister-in-law, for her sake? Perhaps love is just that inexplicable. Some people seem like philanderers but only love one person. Some people seem deeply in love but have never stopped harassing me over the years. It seemed Matthew would never understand what I truly wanted. During the nearly 3 years I was away, Matthew's company had entrusted several cases to Nathan. Their relationship had evolved from adversarial to something between friends and foes. So, on the day I officially filed for divorce, Nathan asked if I minded him telling Matthew. I smiled. Why would I mind? Even if you don't tell him, the court summons will reach him eventually. Nathan. Well, I'd be telling him in advance. As a friend, I still need your permission as the party involved. I nodded. Go ahead. It would be best if you could convince him to have an amicable divorce. It had been 3 years. What was the point of holding onto a broken marriage? After parting with Nathan, I had originally planned to go straight to my hotel, but I ran into Finn's car on the way. He looked like he had just come from the hospital, pale and unwell. He was also shocked to see me. He had lost his youthful immaturity and now had the makings of a mature man. He asked when I had returned. A couple of days ago. Want to get dinner together? We didn't really have a friendship back then. When Matthew's good-for-nothing friends laughed at me, Finn was among them. But I still accepted his dinner invitation. Not for any other reason, but because I had met someone named Sophie abroad. She was Finn's ex-wife. I heard their divorce was also messy, but luckily, Finn came to his senses relatively quickly and didn't drag it out. He let Sophie go early, and he returned everything he owed her. During dinner, I could tell that Finn probably knew Sophie and I had met abroad, which was why he had so abruptly invited me to dinner. He kept trying to steer the conversation toward Sophie, hoping to hear from me whether she was doing well. I waited until after we had finished eating, as I was getting up to leave, to tell him, Finn, don't worry, Sophie is doing very well now, and I introduced her to my doctor. I believe it won't be long before she can speak again. Finn smiled, satisfied, as he looked down. I thought I saw a tear in the corner of his eye. Do people only have a great awakening after they've truly lost someone? Then what about Matthew? What would it take for him to finally let me go? The day before the court hearing, Matthew came to me and asked me to accompany him to a temple to fulfill a vow. He said that after we did, he would finalize the divorce with me. No court necessary. I was skeptical, but the way he looked at me then was exactly the same as how he looked at me 10 years ago, when he loved me most. I couldn't help but feel my heart soften. A pang of sadness. I thought I had completely let go of this relationship, but I never expected that one look from him would bring back all the memories. I agreed to Matthew's request and went to the temple with him. He was very devout, even bathing and burning incense before we went. I asked him, "What did you wish for?" "Matthew, for your early return. But even if I came back, I wouldn't continue living with you." "I know. Then you." I once advised Finn to cherish what he had, because I know how much it hurts to lose someone. Matthew wasn't looking at me when he said this. He was gazing at the deities, as if atoning for his sins. "I'm afraid that you and I will end up like Finn and Sophie, never seeing each other again, not even in death." I didn't respond. To me, his wishes, his pleas, had nothing to do with me. I once loved him as if he were my life. Now, I only loved myself. Matthew. Yes. Listen to the sound of the wind in this temple. It's so gentle, just like my future. Gentle and free.